to our friends from Nexus. Give a round of applause, please.
Hi, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Anyway, I'm local, so madali lang kausap dito. So, yung mga may questions later on, let me know. So, uh, I'll introduce myself. I'm Nido from Nexus. So, I'm the head of the architecture and engineering team. Basically, we're handling a lot of cybersecurity products. So, for today's topic, I'm gonna discuss about who can read this second word here, especially those techie guys. Good. So I heard zero. So yes, my topic is about why zero trust matters. So if everyone here is not familiar or not heard yung zero trust, so this is why I want to also um, take the time to uh, cho- um, chose this topic for you to learn more about what is zero trust. So to start, zero trust is not a product, okay? It's a concept, it's a principle, or you can call it also a methodology when it comes to designing your infrastructure or your cybersecurity infrastructure, rather. So why do we need this? So to give you a background, there's usually what we have right now is we are focused on protecting our internal networks, right? We have yung firewall protecting from the outside environment. Basically, we are on the perimeter. We are focused on protecting our internal assets. That is good, maybe 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, where cloud is not a big thing. Okay? When I say cloud, it's not just the AWS, the Azure. It's basically even your VMware, OpenStack, whatever you're using to virtualize your assets. Yun yung mga cloud when I say that word. So with the cloud adaptation, especially now, we have a lot of things that we need to protect. And most of the time, yung mga assets mo, it's not only on your on your premise anymore. 'Di ba? For example, you are using, let's say, Google Workplace, or you're using Office 365. That's basically another type of cloud technology in a software as a service. So how can you protect those kind of environment if you cannot put a firewall, the traditional ones? The another challenge is a lot of these perimeter securities are being attacked. Okay, so I know most of you maybe are working in the operations team. Maybe you are always seeing a lot of attacks, and most of the time, uh, pwede siyang false positive, but there are chances that it's gonna be something that will give a big impact on your environment. And that's why the third item is when we when we are protecting our environment, nowadays we should expect that one day it's gonna be taken down. Okay? So that's why when we are designing uh, when we are designing our products in Nexus, we have the concept of designing by failure. Basically, we should expect that one of these days, our solutions or our infra might feel that effect. And for you to protect that or prevent that from bringing your business down, basically, you have a lot of things that you need to make sure to make it a tolerant or fault tolerant, basically. Okay? So the zero trust I'm talking right now is based on the NIST. So if you're familiar with the NIST, they are American-based organization. They are providing a lot of public documents that you can read. So one of them is the SP 800-07. So as mentioned earlier, zero trust is not a product. It's a principle that you can apply. Right now, you are using already those firewalls, Palo Alto, Fortinet, Checkpoint. Basically, you just need to re-architect what you have right now, okay? So that it's basically ready to adopt this kind of new concept. in your environment. So that's why we have what we call the zero trust architecture as a byproduct of this principle. So under this zero trust architecture, we had what we have called the zero trust access. Basically, this is the simplest way to explain it. So in a zero trust, basically, you don't trust anyone to access your network, okay? Or your, no, sorry, not the network, the resource. So when you say resource, that can be either a network device, a server, an application inside your network. So if you're trying to access a network or your environment now, most likely baka you're using VPN, right? So what happens there, if you're creating a VPN connection, you are actually allowing the user, if your firewall is configured in a way na you're giving a access to your subnet, particularly sa VPN ninyo, you're basically allowing them to access everything in your environment if it's not configured properly. Okay? But in a zero trust principle, you're not allowing them basically on the network. You're just allowing them to the specific resource na kailangan nilang access. Like for example, if you have a field people or people that working at home, ano ba yung kailangan nilang resources? So let's say for example, they have an HR applications that they need to access. In zero trust, yun lang dapat yung kaya nilang access. They cannot scan the network, they cannot sniff yung mga whatever is ano pa yung mga ibang IP addresses or ano pa yung ibang applications na that's residing on the network. In zero trust, that's basically being blocked or being prevented to happen. So the goals of zero trust is, there's a lot. Basically, this is a guideline for you to understand what you can accomplish when you implement a zero trust principle. But of course, not everything here should be forced na i-accomplish nyo. So it really depends on what's your goal, what's your plan for your organization. Of course, each organization is different, even if you're in the same industry. So basically, you just need to understand what's the business requirement and what can I do in order for it to be, one thing is fault tolerant. But in my perspective, one of the things that very important here is the second item, that all communication must be secured regardless of network location. So meaning to say, even if you're working at home, accessing your resources, kahit let's say you're using HTTPS on that web application, it's not necessarily secured kagad yun. So there's a lot of things that can happen between you working at home going to that application hosted on your network. So in zero trust, this can be possible by making sure that end-to-end encryption, for example, can be accomplished much easier. Okay? And then when it comes to the VCB or the view of yung mga, in terms of the network, there's also assumption that in your network, kahit internal network yan, it should not be considered as trusted anymore. Because malwares or people that, or not people, sorry, but applications that are used for being snooping or sniffing yung mga environment ninyo, yung network niya basically it's not clean. That's the assumption in the zero trust. That is why I mentioned earlier, yung end-to-end connection should be a priority in terms of protecting your environment. So there are pillars. I'm not gonna talk about this, but the given high-level idea, these are the things that you need to consider in terms of protecting your, again, your environment. So there's a lot of things that you need to consider. And the important part here is the user trust and the device trust. Basically, who is accessing and what maybe device they are using to access your resources. Now, this is the logical zero trust architecture. So this is still under the NIST that I mentioned earlier. So in a zero trust architecture, there are a lot of things that you can see here. Pero basically, it's, for example, nasan yung endpoint if you're gonna ask. So endpoint is under the continuous diagnostic and mitigation system. So basically, one of the key items that in order for you to have a good zero trust architecture is the continuous detection and mitigation of your environment. So for example, if you're using EDR right now or yung mga endpoint detection and response, that's one of the tools that you can use in order for you to have a good continuous mitigation and detection. So if I'm gonna ask, or if you're gonna ask me, what kind of tools or softwares that you can use aside from the what you have right now? So um, Nexus is currently a partner of Zscaler. So that's why our objective here with Zscaler is for us to help you understand how we can shape and change your current architecture into much simpler form. So for example, maybe your current infra is you're using a lot of firewalls in your environment, and these firewalls are being managed by a number of people. And then hindi pa kasama dyan yung mga other security tools like your web gateway, your sandboxing. So I think in the operations perspective, it's gonna be difficult to manage them, especially if you're not, or if you don't have a good number of people handling your environment. So in Zscaler's perspective, we want to make it as simple as like this one. So instead of managing yung multiple appliances for security web gateway, for your sandbox, even your firewall, we can have it as simple as one agent, and Zscaler will manage everything, every security you have, you're required in the cloud. So it's much simpler. You just need to have that agent, and that agent will automatically handle the connection going to that cloud environment of Zscaler. So imagine if you encounter a ransomware attack. So in a ransomware attack, this is for example, a cyber kill chain that whenever you're infected by ransomware, most of the time, this is the steps that being used by the attacker. So of course, you need an entry point in your environment, and then this entry point can be anywhere. Pwedeng a person using his laptop at home, or maybe a person just downloading a file inside your corporate network. So the entry point really is the critical area here. But if you're already protecting your environment from this kind of attack, especially if you're restricting yung mga resources, the chance of that ransomware will spread will be lesser. Now remember, nung nag-start nga yung pandemic, there's a lot of SMB, mga small medium companies, that ask me if they should pay ransomware. And I told them, syempre, don't pay. But when I learned, too late na pala. They already paid. So yung loss nila doon is quite big already because they paid 300K amount. So imagine that if you have understand and prevented that as early as possible, hindi na sana sila nawalan ng ganong klaseng amount. And this is also the same thing that I introduced to them because it's very important for them to have a people that are working at home to access their resources whenever they need. So Zscaler protects your environment by minimizing the attack surface. So from the device itself, we can already have what we call the device posture. And then upon going to the inside of the network, we can also see if there are further attempts. So for example, if this device or person hindi pa siya nagpakita ng intent in the first place, so it can already see yung environment nila to if may mga naglateral movement, for example. And then the last part is if there are any chance that this attack is not just doing ransomware but basically stealing data or exfiltrating data outside of your organization, we can also have a DLP in place in your environment. So this is being done with a single agent and a cloud services without much overhead for your organization. So in comparison with the firewall or traditional VPN approach, we can do more with a zero trust approach, and with the help of Zscaler as well, we can further improve our operations, not just the simplicity of the approach ng architecture, but even yung operations nyo will be much easier. So going back to the zero trust architecture, so this one, I think I saw a lot of presenters earlier, like the cyber one. So this architecture can be further improved. So depending again on your environment, you can see, you can also introduce yung mga automation and orchestration. So when I mentioned about designing by failure, one of the key item na kailangan nyo to have there is you have a lot of automation to make sure that yung tolerance ng environment nyo can be achieved in a much faster rate. That's why automation, especially if you're using a lot of cloud technologies or cloud, you have a big cloud environment. Automation is a big or key item in terms of designing a good architecture. So, some questions na nare-receive ko rin is, if I implement Zero Trust, totally ba eliminated yung risk? The answer is no. Because no one can really totally eliminate the risk, but you can further understand, nalilesen yung mga type of risk nyo, or there are some type of risk na eliminate, but you should understand that there's still a lot of things that you need to consider. So don't worry, you don't have to take picture of this. Anyway, I'll share the slide naman. So just to give you an idea, there's a lot of things that you still need to consider. Wag na kayo maging confident na hindi na kayo mabi-breach. But what I'm telling is, we are lessening your threats or the risk that your organization can encounter. So who can use the Zero Trust? So depending on your requirement, there's also things to consider. So may mga deployment approach. If you're using a lot of, or if you have a lot of branches dito sa Pilipinas, we have a lot of requirements na kailangan dumaan muna sa HQ bago pumunta sa internet. So ina-erase na natin yon. We can already allow those users from your branch directly access your resources on the internet. Okay. So in migrating the Zero Trust architecture, there's two ways. You can either have a full-blown or partial. Of course, the recommended one is partial. We cannot totally take down naman yung buong system ninyo when we are implementing a new solution. So I think that ends my slide. If there are any questions now.
Okay, so any questions for our for Nexus? Okay, a very shy crowd as usual.
So we have a booth there. So if you have questions, you can just approach us, and then anyway, we can also meet you after this event. Just leave your contact information to our booth, and then we'll reach out to you. Okay. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much.